The tractor was at her gate when she came back from the school run. It was a Tuesday morning in September of 1987, and Carol Denton had dropped her two sons at Fountain Central Elementary and driven back to her 40-acre property outside Covington, Indiana, to find a Massey Ferguson 2680 sitting at the end of her gravel drive with its front wheels in the ditch and a note tucked under the windshield wiper. The note was from Gary Pruitt, the owner of Pruitt Farm Equipment on Route 136. It said, "Carol, brought this one out. It's yours if you want it. Can't move it on the lot. Engines seized, hydraulics gone. If you don't want it, call the shop and we'll arrange to haul it off." Gary. Carol read the note twice. She was 34 years old. She had been widowed 14 months earlier when her husband Tom had died of a heart attack at 41, leaving her with two boys aged 7 and 9, 80 acres of rented farmland that she was trying In the spring of 1988, her neighbor Warren Falk, who farmed 400 acres to her north and had been one of the people who helped Carol through the first months after Tom's death in the practical, present way that farming neighbors help, by showing up with equipment when equipment was needed, asked Carol if she would be willing to service his Massey Ferguson 390 on a regular basis. Not just fix it when it broke, but maintain it. Oil changes, filter replacements, fluid checks, pre-season inspections. Warren said he trusted Carol's hands more than he trusted the dealers, and he was tired of scheduling around the dealer's availability, which was never convenient during planting or harvest. Carol asked what he had in mind. Warren said he would pay her a flat fee for the year, and she could schedule the work at times that suited her farm calendar. He said he would pay whatever she thought was fair. Carol thought about it for a day. Then she wrote a number on a piece of paper and gave it to Warren. $280 per year, covering 2 full services and 1 pre-season inspection. Warren said that was less than the dealer charged for 1 service. Carol said she knew that. Warren said he would pay more if she wanted. Carol said $280 was what the work cost her, with a reasonable return on her time, and that was what she intended to charge. Warren signed. He sent his neighbor Harold to Carol the following week. Harold signed. By the end of 1988, Carol had 6 service agreements. She had not advertised. She had not told anyone she was offering agreements. She had written a number on a piece of paper for a neighbor who asked, and the neighbor had told other neighbors, and the other neighbors had called. This was how word moved in Fountain County, through the specific channels of people who trusted each other's judgment, where a recommendation from Warren Falk was worth more than any advertisement, because Warren Falk was known to be careful about what he recommended. By the end of 1990, Carol had 23 service agreements. By the end of 1993, she had 61. She had hired her first part-time helper in 1992, a retired mechanic named Phil, who had worked at the Massey Ferguson dealer in Attica for 21 years, and who brought to Carol's shed the specific institutional knowledge of a man who had seen the same failure modes on the same models repeated across 2 decades, and knew without looking what was wrong and what the fix required. Phil worked 3 days a week. Carol paid him $40 an hour. The rate was fair, and Phil knew it was fair and did not ask for more, which Carol took as confirmation that the rate was correct. The service agreement model that Carol had built by accident in 1988 turned out to solve a problem that was larger than Warren Falk's scheduling frustration. The problem was this: the farmers in her area who ran Massey Ferguson equipment, and there were many of them because the brand had been well represented in Fountain County since the 1970s, and because the farmers who bought it tended to keep it rather than trade it on the upgrade cycles that newer brands encouraged, were maintaining their machines reactively. They fixed what broke. They serviced what demanded service. They deferred what could be deferred, because deferring was cheaper in the short term, and the short term was always the term that the farm budget was most pressured by. Reactive maintenance is more expensive than preventive maintenance across any reasonable planning horizon. Carol knew this from Tom's margin notes, and from Phil's 21 years at the dealer, and from her own 11 years of watching what broke and why. A hydraulic pump that failed because it ran low on fluid for 6 months cost more to repair than the fluid check that would have caught the level dropping. An injection pump that failed because a filter had been run past its service life cost more to replace than the filter that should have been changed 3 months earlier. The math was not complicated. The obstacle was not the math. The obstacle was the structure, finding the time, scheduling the work, paying the bill when it arrived after a month that had already been tight. The service agreement removed the obstacle. Fixed annual fee, budgeted and paid in advance, work done on a schedule. Carol controlled at times that didn't conflict with the critical periods of the farm calendar. The farmer knew the cost before the year started. Carol knew the revenue before the year started. Both parties knew what was expected and when. The uncertainty, the breakdown during planting, The dealer visit that couldn't be scheduled for 2 weeks, the repair bill that arrived in a month when the cash wasn't there, was removed from the equation for the farmers who enrolled. Those farmers' machines lasted longer, their breakdown rates dropped, their unplanned repair costs fell. Carol tracked this because Carol tracked everything in the same notebooks she had kept since 1988, and by 1995 the data was unambiguous. A farm on a service agreement with her averaged one unplanned repair event per year per machine. A farm not on an agreement averaged 3.4. She did not publish this data. She mentioned it when asked to farmers who were considering an agreement and wanted to understand the value. The farmers who heard it understood it because they understood machinery, and they understood the cost of downtime during planting and the cost of a breakdown during harvest. And they could calculate from their own recent history what 3.4 unplanned repair events per year had cost them compared to what one would have cost. Most of them signed. By 2001, Carol Denton's service agreement base had reached 312 contracts across 7 counties. Her annual revenue was $214,000. She had 3 mechanics on staff: Phil, who was now working 4 days a week, a younger man named Steve, who had come to her shed as a customer in 1997 with a machine she repaired so correctly that he asked if she was hiring, and a woman named Janet, who had grown up on a farm in Warren County and had the mechanical instincts that farm upbringings produce in people who pay close attention to things that break and understand why. None of this had been planned. Carol had not written a business plan in 1987 or 1988 or at any point since. She had fixed a tractor because the tractor could be fixed and she could fix it. She had maintained Warren Falk's machine because Warren had asked and the work was available to her. She had written a number on a piece of paper because the number was what the work cost and a fair return on her time, and charging more than that was not something she was built to do. Everything after that had followed from those 3 decisions, as naturally as water follows a drainage grade. Not because someone designed the path, but because the path was where the conditions pointed. The 2680 that Gary Pruitt had left at her gate in 1987 was still working. It had crossed 17,000 hours in 2000. Carol had rebuilt the engine once, in 1996, when compression testing during a routine inspection showed that the time had come. The rebuild cost her $1,200 in parts and a week of her own labor. After the rebuild, the engine ran as clean as it had in 1988 when she first started it in the February cold. Gary Pruitt retired in 1999 and sold Pruitt Farm Equipment to a younger dealer group that rebranded and expanded and then contracted when the farm economy tightened after 2002, and the customer base that the expansion had assumed did not materialize at the assumed volume. By 2005, the successor dealership had closed its Covington location. The nearest Massey Ferguson dealer was now 41 miles away. Carol noticed this development the way she noticed everything, with attention, without comment, and with an understanding of what it meant for her business. The farms in her area that had been sending warranty work and scheduled maintenance to the dealer would now either drive 41 miles or find another option. Carol was the other option. She added 16 new service agreements in the 6 months following the Covington dealership closure. By the end of 2006, her agreement base was 593 contracts. She thought about Gary Pruitt sometimes when she was driving between farms on her service route, the truck stocked with filters and fluids and the tools for whatever the day's schedule required. She thought about the note under the windshield wiper and the question it had contained. If you don't want it, call the shop and we'll arrange to haul it off. She had not called the shop. She had kept the machine and fixed it and built something around what fixing it had taught her about what the farms in her area needed and didn't have. Gary had left the 2680 because he couldn't move it. Carol had kept it because she could see what it was worth before it was worth anything. That difference between seeing the value and not seeing it was not a difference in intelligence or information. Gary had been in the farm equipment business for 30 years. He knew Massey Ferguson machines. He had looked at the 2680 and seen an $800 loss. Carol had looked at it and seen a path. The path had taken 22 years to walk to its current point. Carol was 56 years old. She had walked it one service agreement at a time. In September of 2009, Carol Denton's service agreement base reached 847 contracts. The number arrived on a Tuesday, which was the same day of the week the 2680 had been left at her gate 22 years earlier. Carol noticed this when she updated her contract log at the end of the day. She sat with it for a moment. Then she wrote the number in the log, 847, the way she wrote every number in every log, accurately, completely, without inflation or diminishment. Her annual revenue that year was $498,000. By the time the year's final contracts were settled, it crossed $500,000. Carol noted that number too and closed the log and went to check on the 2680, which was in the shed because she had pulled it in for an oil change that afternoon. The engine ran at idle with the same even note it had been running since the February morning in 1988 when she first heard it, 22 years of correct maintenance having produced in the machine the specific mechanical character of something that has been treated well across a long time. She checked the oil, clean, at level. She checked the hydraulic fluid, full, clear. She greased the fittings. She noted the hour meter, 19,412. She shut it down. She put her tools away. She turned off the shed lights. Outside, the September fields were done for another season. The 847 farms whose machines she maintained were already thinking about fall tillage and winter preparation and what the following spring would require. Their machines were ready for whatever they decided because their machines had been maintained through the year, the way machines need to be maintained. Preventively, consistently, by someone who knew what she was doing and charged what the work was worth. Gary Pruitt had left a machine at her gate because he couldn't find a use for it. Carol Denton had found 847 uses for what fixing it had taught her. The machine was still in the shed. The number was in the log. And in the morning, there would be more work. There was always more work. That had never changed.